Greetings, Dragon Ball fans, and welcome to Part 8 of What If Goku Kept His Tail, where we follow the Earthbound Saiyans after Goku managed to assert dominance over that which killed his adoptive grandfather, Gohan. Not only Raditz, but also Vegeta and Nappa are both still around, to varying degrees, as we approach the time of the Majin Buu Saga. Previously, Goku had not only gained control of the Azaru, but quite by accident had stumbled headfirst into the Ikari form, seen years later in Dragon Ball Super's incarnation of Broly. He single-handedly defeated his brother, Raditz, then, with some help, managed to best not just the prideful prince of the Saiyans, Vegeta, and his minion Nappa, but also the intergalactic tyrant, Frieza. The androids were scaled up slightly to compensate, but they failed to take into account someone's wounded pride, and were overpowered by the relentlessly trained, near Grade 2 Super Saiyan Vegeta. He then challenged Kakarot to a duel, but unfortunately for the prince, Dende offered that affront to his pride a branch, in the form of an improved hyperbolic time chamber. Now devoid of the two-people, two-year, and two-time entering limitations, Goku took his brother and Piccolo in there to check out the new decor. After a frustrated Vegeta gave himself over to the berserk, wrathful form of Ikari, we saw Raditz do the reveal to what they had found in their almost year in that time chamber. Having perfected the Ikari form, they had started pushing their boundaries, and found something interesting beyond the wrathful state that was denied the prince because his royal blood had robbed him of the more painstakingly earned Ozaru control. Gohan, then, finally, joined an actual school, and met the tenacious teen crime fighter, Videl. His interest in this vaguely capable girl continues to grow after that infamous bus incident. Her tenacity at crime fighting is impressive, and she's certainly got talent, but lacks any semblance of ki control. He does feel a bit sorry for her, though, as he watches her be just a bit more paranoid now that someone, somewhere, knows who she is, or at least what she does when she's not bored stiff at school. When he hears from his dad that there is a tournament coming up, and they're all entering, he approaches her little clique at the lunch table and asks her if she'll be entering the upcoming World Martial Arts Tournament to compete against her father as well. As well? What's that supposed to mean? Videl asks as Sharpner and Erasa both stare up at the resident super nerd in disbelief. Oh, well, 'cause my dad won one of those. Back before I was born, Gohan says. Come to think of it, my mom actually proposed to him at it. Your mother proposed at a World Martial Arts Tournament? Videl asks, not believing him for a second. Yeah, after he beat her. Oh, of course, that makes total sense. And, well, of course she's entering. Hopefully that speedster guy will, even getting to face the reigning champ, her dad, has been her dream, even if she ends up losing. So, this dork's dad was a world champion too, huh? She thinks, and finally takes a good look at the resident bookworm that ruins all the grading curves, if the concept even exists in Japan. Despite him being almost painfully nerdy, upon closer inspection, he appears to be, well, basically a walking, talking Greek statue, if Greece ever even existed in the Dragon world. A muffled giggle informs her that Erasa has noticed it as well, and as she feels her own cheeks powering up to their rarely seen super flustered form, she manages to splutter out that, hey, maybe they could spar some time, and, she could give him a few pointers or whatever. As it turns out, though, pointers are not needed. Hearing that Gohan will actually be training for once, Goten still assumes his role as third wheel. He is not just a bit miffed that Dad and Uncle Raditz are off training without him, so he had little option but to hit up his bookworm brother and this clueless, untrained girl who initially seems to have it in for his silly big bro. It doesn't take more than a minute, though, for Goten to do what they do, and he launches himself at his brother, catching the guy completely off guard and cratering him into an unfortunately located rock formation. Videl runs over to the rock pile and starts digging, only to get knocked over as Gohan just kinda stands up, not a scratch on him. She looks back at the other boy to see that Goten is floating there, in a ready pose, eagerly waiting for the counterattack that never comes. He can fly? Videl asks in shock. What on earth? She rounds on Gohan and is suddenly and absolutely certain that she knows that stupid, goofy smile. Where has she seen that before? They stare at each other, frozen for a moment, before he shrugs and says, Well, I can keep a secret if you can, oh magnificent Macarilla. Magnificent? You really... She starts. Hey, don't change the subject. You can't be... She trails off, noticing something behind him. You've got a tail. she says, backing away slightly, glancing back and forth between the still floating, still expectant Goten and the once nerdy and entirely unassuming Gohan. You can't be him, are you? The Saiyaman? Great. What? The Great Saiyaman. Whatever. So does your whole family fly and have tails? Nah, Mum's a human, like you, and Goten wasn't born with one for some reason. Whoa, back up. What do you mean, a human? 20 minutes later, with Goten having long since given up on any training and flown away in disgust, Videl has processed most of what she has just seen and heard, and she finally asks that one burning question that remains. So, can you teach me how to fly? I mean, I feel bad for Krillin here. He didn't learn to fly until randomly picking it up somewhere in the early Saiyan saga. And Videl learns it in what, less than a week? Well, here they have even more time. Months, actually. As Chi-Chi had actually wanted Goku, or at the very least Raditz, to go and win some real money for once. Those few mercenary contracts Raditz does with his new wife just don't seem to pay very well after Violet is done splurging. When the tournament itself finally rolls around, Gohan briefly debates going as their costumed alter egos, but being the daughter of Hercule, if you believe the man's own hype, the champ, Videl wants to enter normally, and so Gohan follows suit. She has by now already met the boy's parents, much to Goku's delight. Chi-Chi is a bit less approving, but her son's happiness comes first. This time, however, it's Goku who goes about making things awkward. The daughter of the previous world champion, he beams. That's so cool! She's so good at hiding her energy, too. Yeah. The matchups will be quite different this time round, with the addition of not only Raditz, but also the backwards baseball cap wearing Nappa, who smiles at them a bit menacingly as he strides past to check in. They exchange glances, all mentally agreeing that perhaps his time with Mai and the Pilaf gang hasn't been that good for him. Then, to everyone's shock, Ater, 17, and of course 18, all arrive with Krillin and the wee tot of a blonde-haired girl, Marin. This may be the alternate timeline, but she still has a thing for short guys, right? 17 had, through his sister, also heard about the tournament, and thought it might be nice to help fix up his frost-covered animal sanctuary, while 18 was in it purely for the usual reasons. And 17, it seems, did take up residence at Jingle Village with Ater, Dr. Flap, and company. Goku greets the big guy happily enough, then checks to make sure that he's okay with watching the fights. Oh, he'll be fine with watching, as long as no one expects him to enter. Raditz has also brought his own family along. It had all started out innocently enough, on those rare occasions that the ex-Colonel Violet had actually picked up a contract worth her time. She'd taken to asking him to tag along with her, strictly as backup and company, mind you. No need to hoggle the glory since she's not that fond of splitting the payouts, unless things get too hairy. Things had progressed slowly at first, but a few of those aforementioned hairy situations later, and... haha, get it? Hairy? 'Cause Raditz has a lot of... oh, fine. I'll show myself out. So they eventually hooked up, okay? She wasn't overly thrilled with moving next door to that wrecking ball that was Goku, but on meeting the sensible-minded Chi-Chi and their adorable children, she'd relented. The fact that Raditz could fly, like, really fast, and even offered to teach her how to if she wanted, also meant that they could go pretty much anywhere. And yes, she did want to learn how to, so learn she did. Hearing about the prize money for the tournament, though, she was initially eager to participate. Wait, what? No weapons? Well, that's just silly. She still comes with him, and will at least attempt to enter. He better not let her win, though, if they do face each other. Eyes on the prize, bucko. Yes, dear. Besides, even if she gets knocked out, he's still stronger than his little brother, right? So they'll make out nicely. Yeah. As the tournament commences, we get to see Nappa step up against Spopovich. Unfortunately for the latter, he is his normal skin tone and lacking in the forehead marking department. He had really wanted to set the record straight against Hercule after being embarrassed so badly at the last tournament. Also, unfortunately for the relatively big guy, fate will not be that kind to him. Nappa beats any thought of embarrassment out of him, and only stops when the announcer starts yelling at him, the match clearly being over. Nervously watching the medics carry Spopovich away, Videl passes by to face down Jewel. Given her recent crash course in ki control, it's a virtual cakewalk. Jewel is still a bit of a jerk, though, so fair to say Videl enjoys watching him bounce off the arena wall. The announcer guy is just happy he didn't have to shout at them to stop this time. We are then treated to Gohan facing down against the enigmatic Kibito. It happens exactly as in canon, right up to the point where Gohan would normally go Super Saiyan 2. I mean, who needs that when Super Ikari is 5 times higher than that silly lightning form's multiplier? When Gohan does go Super Ikari, Kibito is blown away. Initially, Gohan stands there waiting, as Kibito just gawks at him, and then, well, he attacks. There is no siphoning, no shin clamps on the boy, and Kibito goes flying into the arena wall with an impressive thud. Gohan then walks back, passing Piccolo and 18 as they make their way up. He can see that Piccolo seems a bit on edge, and they share a glance, but Piccolo just shakes his head, as much to get his mind in the game as to say he doesn't know what's wrong. But Gohan has been feeling a bit off himself, since watching Nappa. Piccolo squares off against Krillin's wife, 18, and he does manage to get his head in the fight, so 18 is defeated. By a non-Super Namekian Piccolo? Really? What are you smoking, man? And can we all have some? Well, he's not been slacking, has he? With not only 4 full-blooded Saiyans, but also 2 of the 4 hybrids running around, in the form of Gohan, Goten, Trunks, and Raditz's recent baby with Violet, he has pushed himself hard to keep up. And then there was that trip he took into the time chamber with Goku and Raditz a while back. For Raditz's and Violet's child's name, I'm thinking Nasu, by the way, as in aubergine, since the kid will probably have dark violet hair. Feel free to suggest others, and genders too, please. The comment section is that-a-way. When Krillin and Marin wave at Mummy as she gets up, he sighs in mild relief. It's not like they'd actually get to face each other, given the competition, but he hadn't been looking forward to explaining to Marin why Mummy and Daddy were fighting. The next matchup comes as a shock to everyone, especially 17. When the Prince is called, Goku and Raditz are suddenly acutely aware of who he is. Vegeta pulls his cowl back, and his smile does not reach his eyes. 17 just pales a bit, and is likely playing back memories from the last time they'd fought, when he'd kind of broken him. As they step up to the arena, 17 turns to the announcer and says that he forfeits, then just walks away. Raditz passes Vegeta without sharing any telling glances, and goes to face down the small, pointy-eared Shin fellow. Piccolo had been painfully awkward around this guy for some reason, and Raditz, for one, was curious as to why. He is left a bit disappointed as the slightly shocked Shin rockets out of the arena, just like Kibito did for Gohan. So why is Piccolo so freaked out by these guys? They're total weaklings. We are then treated to a rather fun romp as Krillin gets to stomp on Raditz's new wife, the no longer a colonel, Violet. But, he is really nice about it. Not at all because Raditz is right over there, judging his every move, ready to glare at him menacingly if she walks away with a bruise or two. Or maybe smile approvingly? It's hard to get a read on that long-haired guy sometimes. I'm sure there is a suitably comic moment when Krillin discovers that the woman can actually fly, followed quickly by a very underwhelming double sundae. Really more of a sprinkling of hundreds of thousands. Hercule Satan, meanwhile, has spent most of this time sleeping, waiting for his matchup with that supposedly former world martial arts champion, Goku something? Well, obviously that former champ had bowed out of the previous tournament when he'd spotted his competition. So he must think he's trained himself up enough to face the current reigning champ now. He'd heard the buzz about the guy, though. Very showy, lots of tricks up his sleeve. Well, best be on guard with those dirty tricks in the arena when they end up fighting in the initial round. Hadn't Videl mentioned something about the guy's son? Unfortunately, Hercule has by now dragged himself up to answer the nearly frantic banging on the door, just before Krillin faced off against Violet. He was then treated to the utter delight of witnessing all the theatrics firsthand. At least, he thought they were theatrics. Who'd authorized all these effects? Wait, there were 2 rounds like this? A big green guy fought some other woman? Ah, they're going easy on the women in these matches. That makes sense. Actually, no. Videl's match had been fairly normal, hadn't it? Despite that brute that had preceded her. Besides, she simply would not stand for that. She's too stubborn. And too dedicated. Man, she'll make a great champ when he ages out. Being very much hyped by the announcer, the previous 2 world champions, Hercule Satan and Son Goku, face off in a match to end all matches. It starts out comically enough with the reigning champ putting on his shiniest moves, but it lasts all of 30 seconds though, as Goku, expecting great things from the reigning champ, sorta throws a punch. And as Hercule collapses to the ground, and the stunned silence turns to raucous cheering, we will bring Part 8 to a close. Something is fishy with the 25th World Martial Arts Tournament, and it's not the sushi. Piccolo can certainly feel it. Even Raditz and Gohan are getting weird vibes. And the enigmatically taciturn Vegeta is not the source. Given Nappa's treatment of Spopovich, how do you think Videl will fare against him? Will Gohan be able to contain himself if he sees someone he thinks he knows being excessively mean to someone he kinda sorta has the feels for? And where are the Majins at? Shin and Kibito are on deck, as expected, but so far there's been no trappings, stabbings, drainings, or vaguely concealed kilometer glancings. Find out next time on Dragon Ball. What if Goku kept his tail?